Hi there, everybody, and welcome to the weekly coaching recap. It is March 1st. As you may have heard, every week I host an open coaching and mentorship call over in the community I run, Misfit to Maverick, and there are always incredible questions and ideas that come to the table around coaching, running coaching projects, what next steps could be. And during those calls, the people on the call capture their ideas on digital Post-its in what I call a collage, using the Jamboard software over on Google. And what I've started doing is referring to those notes to bring you a quick recap, 10 minutes or so with those highlights. If you're in Misfit to Maverick, I invite you to share your follow-up questions and comments below. If you're watching this on my YouTube channel or as part of my email community, I hope I say something that helps you in some small way. All right, on to the highlights. So one of the big notes that actually covers many notes was this idea of having agreements with our clients for communication. So this is something I'm actively working on in Misfit to Maverick right now, really making sure that community guidelines are clear and also crafting agreements around how we both ask for and share feedback. You know, I think sometimes that space of where we are communicating is made up of the two people who are engaged in that conversation, right? This person's delivering something, this person is hearing something, and the intention can be different in many cases from how something is received. I think also we need to consider that the person who's receiving the feedback wants to feel empowered to ask for what it is that they need, the kind of feedback that they're looking for. And one of the ways that you can do this in your coaching is by setting up very clear agreements at the beginning of those partnerships. When I do one-on-one partnerships, even when I've done small group partnerships, our first session is always devoted towards going over shared agreements about our work together, not only the nuts and bolts of like when we're going to show up and what happens if we have to cancel, but things like, you know, the kind of coaching that I'm going to offer, saying I can offer high flame coaching or low flame coaching, that you as the client have the power to ask for a higher flame or a lower flame. These kinds of agreements are incredibly important and set the foundation for a very, very powerful partnership. So if you are in Misfit to Maverick, we're going to start a thread where we're collecting different ideas about agreements. And again, if you're watching this outside of Misfit to Maverick, just consider, do you have agreements in place with the clients you're working with from the very, very beginning? It's super important. Teach something that has helped you. So this actually was inspired by the most recent podcast by Dr. Shantae Cofield, also known as the Movement Maestro over on Instagram. And she just offers incredible marketing advice. And, you know, at the very beginning of your journey as a coach, one of the things that there is to practice is being seen and offering help in some way. But it can feel very difficult in the beginning because if you haven't worked with any clients or you haven't gotten specific feedback about how your coaching has helped them, it can be hard to know, like, well, what do I have that can help you? The answer to that is to share things that have helped you personally. Right? You have been impacted by something. There's been an idea you've learned, a tool that someone's taught you, a coaching insight that you've had as a result of something else. Maybe you've read, maybe you're a learner and you're an input and you've like, oh my gosh, this idea has helped me so much. Teach that stuff because you are the authority on what has helped you. And so you can turn around and share those ideas with others as a way of getting started. Teach something that has helped you. And a couple of people said that, share something small that has helped you. That came out as a good insight from the call. Okay. This was super, super interesting. So one of the coaches on the call, she's been coaching for a few years now, and she's really been experimenting with shorter coaching partnerships. I think this is very interesting. And this is coming from someone who for a number of years, I want to say, the only way that someone could work with me was for 6-month chunks. And I deeply believed in those longer partnerships. I recognized that things were likely going to, you know, there's something very interesting that happens at the 3-month mark. If you are someone who loves really long one-on-one partnerships, I totally get it. And from a business perspective, that was the only way that someone could work with me. There was like a lot of groundwork to lay before that partnership began, right? Because the longer the partnership, it usually is a higher investment, not only of money, but of time and energy and commitment. there were multiple conversations and discovery calls, and I just think the runway was longer. And it got to a point actually where I realized that the discovery calls that I was doing on the front end of it were running 90 minutes, sometimes 2 hours. And I was like mapping out our whole discovery call on this whiteboard and really trying to lean into like, what is this partnership going to be about? What's the big picture here? And I suddenly had this insight that the discovery calls in and of themselves were a valuable coaching session. And so what I did is I actually extracted that discovery call and turned it into its own offer. So now I not only had my 6-month coaching offer, I also had this week-long coaching offer on the front end that was it was an easier thing to market and talk about and sell and introduce people to because it wasn't as big a commitment. Again, not only financially, but just in terms of time, in terms of like what it is that we were going to be doing together. The people I was talking to were like, oh yeah, I can get my head around a week. And I alpha tested it. I knew that it worked. I was getting really good feedback. I was able to turn around and talk about those results. And so coming back to what came up on the call yesterday, one of the coaches is, really trying to experiment with what a smaller, more compact 2-week initial coaching offer could look like. And her experience is informed by her lifestyle, her interests, her strengths. There's some asynchronous components. It's bringing in some of her previous work. She's alpha tested it with a few people. Now she's ready to kind of bring it out into the wider world and try and get some new clients into it. And the insights that emerged for everyone on the call was just this idea that, as coaches, we know and understand the full journey that we can take someone on. We have likely experienced that deep transformation ourselves, and we're like, let's do the big thing together. But this is where we have to just be very mindful that what we see in our minds as the captains of these incredible coaching ships we have is different than what that person on Island A is thinking. They're not thinking about the entire journey. They're just looking for some help. They just want a little bit of hope. They just need some assistance. And so while we're able to see the depths of the work we can do, I want to invite you to consider maybe there's a very, very first step that you could turn into a more streamlined, focused, kind of shorter coaching experience that is the first experience that a client has with you. I think it's oftentimes scary to think about that because it's like, but I want to work with them for 6 months, or I know the transformation takes a longer time. I understand that. But by offering something up front that, let's say, a 2-session experience, maybe it's a debrief and you give them a little bit of a plan, or, you whatever it is that you're interested in coaching around, it's a little bit zoomed out. It's a little bit of like figuring out all the big pieces, which is incredibly helpful to your client, by the way, just like having the space to kind of lay it all out in front of them. Maybe that could be the beginning. And there were a number of notes on this page that suggested this. Big goals can be broken down into small milestones. What is the very first thing you could help someone accomplish? And could that be, again, in a smaller coaching experience? Coaching offerings can be just focused on the very next step. We think that people know the simple thing, but most likely they don't, right? What you think is just like automatic understanding, the regular person out there who hasn't been on this journey yet, they might not know what you find very simple. So as much as possible, try and zoom out from your work, maybe engage in conversation with other people and say, what could be the very first thing that I teach someone here? What could be the smallest win that I could help someone feel and experience that would not only lead to a great coaching partnership or great coaching experience, but might also plant the seed for continued work together once they kind of get that first, not only experience of your coaching, but that reward of like, oh, look what I've seen and experienced in just 1 or 2 weeks, or kind of a smaller coaching experience. I think I'm close to my 10 minutes. Was there anything else? As a coach, we know the full journey that is possible for a client, but maybe that is too much for a client to grasp at the beginning, right? You know the whole journey. They're just at the beginning. Stay in that beginner's mindset. There's one big one on the front here around use your client's words, not yours. This is something that I come back to all the time. As coaches, we are very familiar with coach speak. We know what we mean when we say things like self-awareness and build a foundation. But I always like to say, is that what people are actually saying in a coffee shop with their friends? Are they saying, you know what I really want? I really want to build a foundation of self-awareness. Probably not. It's not that our language isn't important to us. It's that we want to be sure in every place that we can to read the words that we're writing through the filter of, are people actually saying these things? Or am I saying them because it's part of my work and I love it so much? Anyway, so that was that final note. I hope this has been helpful for you. Again, share your comments and questions down below. If you're in Misfit to Maverick, continue the conversation on this article. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. Can't wait to see you again next week. Talk to you all soon.